Hello everyone and welcome to Talk of the Town. We've been at this for a while, so there aren't that many firsts as far as we can tell, but we've got one today. And that is that we're going to be talking today to one of the town's most prominent public officials in a lot of ways, and very prominent to me. My wife, Charlotte Milan, is our town recycling coordinator, and we are going to get today a refresher on curbside recycling and then move out from there. So here we are in front of the DPW building. And Charlotte, you were saying earlier that this is where people need to know to bring stuff when they can't do curbside recycling, right?
Right. In fact, we have a lot of people who visit with questions, and we're also able to answer questions on the phone. But this is a great spot to know about because we have a number of drop-off options for people, and that's sometimes not sure which door to go to. So this is our visitor parking. This is our front door. Come on over and visit us on the second floor.
All right, and we'll talk a little bit more about stuff beyond curbside recycling after we finish with that. But let's head on over into the yard here, and I think you're going to explain to us exactly the do's and don'ts of recycling. I know, though, that you've already done plenty of work with that in the community in terms of there being a recycling guide that is accessible to everybody. You want to tell us about that?
Sure. That gets published every early summer. Should be in everyone's mailboxes by about July 1st. And it gives you not only the whole calendar year for regular delayed trash pickup, for example, for every holiday, but also clear instructions about curbside recycling, as well as all the information you need to know about special drop-off programs, monthly recycling center dates, other things that we've developed over the years that are really popular, like we have a curbside program for picking up holiday trees, in addition to the curbside program for yard waste. But not everybody gets their yard waste, or I should say not all the trees drop the yard waste on the same schedule. So we give people an extra week to bring their yard waste here for one Saturday morning. People really appreciate that. We've had hundreds of cars here in the past dropping off that last bag or two of yard waste, trying to get it off their site for the winter. And same with trees. Some people like to hold on to their trees a lot longer, and we want to make that possible for them, so we have a tree drop-off. So this is where that kind of thing happens, and all those dates are also in the guide.
That's great, and the guide is accessible, you said, I think already. It's probably on the website, on the town's website?
Yes.
Okay, and also delivered to people's houses every
right.
year.
24/7, you can have your questions answered. One more resource is the Request Answer Center that you may have steered people towards before. That's a great way to, you can actually just type a word in and see microwave, like what do I do with a microwave? And the answer would hopefully pop up for that too.
All right, great. So why don't you take us through exactly what we should and shouldn't be doing outside of our homes with our recycling? So
Arlington's primary recycling venue is right at your own, in your own kitchen, your own garage. So that's where most of the recycling takes place in Arlington. And that's the decision that you or I make every time we, or the decisions that you sometimes don't make that you ask me about, for example. What do I do with this? What do I do with that?
Never.
And we are not the only household, I can tell you, that where there's tension around strong opinions, shall we say. In fact, I get phone calls and emails from people who say, it's almost like Dear Abby, Ms. Milan, could you help me save my marriage? Something like that. So people have a good sense of humor about this for the most part, but recycling is something that people have opinions about, which I understand, but I think that's pretty funny because it's pretty clear cut, actually.
All right.
The reason that people have these, let me just say one more thing about this because this is important. The reason people have opinions about this is because they want to recycle more than they can. And that's really frustrating. And I totally get that for Arlington residents. People are conscientious, but they need to be really careful to only recycle what's actually going to get recycled.
Yeah, so that's a really good point, and probably one that we will want to hit on again a couple more times during our conversation here. But
want to see this stuff?
Yeah.
All right.
Why don't you clear cut, let us know what should and also important should not be going into the recycling bin.
Okay. This is my setup. These are my examples here. So I'll start with some things that are really, really typical that people know to recycle really well. Plastic bottles, very recyclable, and they can be recycled a number of times. The plastic material can be recycled a number of times. Steel cans, also very recyclable, and steel can be recycled a number of times. And aluminum. Metal is very valuable in the recycling stream, so we want to make sure all of that gets into our curbside recycling. After that, it gets a little bit more complicated. What other kinds of hard plastics are recyclable, for example? It's not just beverage containers, but also food containers and some bathroom products as well. So things like shampoo bottles, laundry detergent bottles, those are the kinds of things that are really recyclable. We want all of those things. Want to just show you a product. This company, Preserve, makes products out of recycled plastic. So one thing that sometimes helps us remember to think about what we should recycle is to think about it as part of a manufacturing process. So what you are putting in your recycle bin, what you're choosing to separate out and put in your recycle bin, is a part of a manufacturing process to make new items. So this is a storage container, and they have a line of toothbrushes that are made with recycled plastic, and they're all made from this particular kind of plastic. This kind of plastic is different from that kind of plastic. You can look it up online if you really want to know, but this will get made into one kind of consumer product, and this will get made into another kind of consumer product, and that sorting is happening at a material recovery facility.
And just out of curiosity, you were saying that the plastic bottles can be recycled over and over again.
In other words, right now there aren't that many plastic water bottles like this. Companies that are making new plastic water bottles out of these plastic water bottles, but they're working on that. What's more likely is this will get made into something, some other kind of plastic item like recycle bins. And then when this has had its life and it's cracked, which people understand happens, then that can also be recycled in a different stream, and that plastic can get reused.
Okay, and the product that you were just showing us that's made out of recycled materials, can that itself be recycled
Yes.
when it gets to the end of its life? Yes.
Right, so
Okay.
that's why they're going to separate out a particular kind of plastic to make one other kind of plastic. This is probably made with just one kind of plastic. So that's an important thing to remember. I think that helps people remember to put things in clean. And you also want to put things in as though so that they're separated from each other as a material. So
you
an
want to
example of that is a coffee can. This is a steel container, but it's got this rubbery top. This is a different material. If I put this in my recycle bin as is, it will only go one direction. It can't get separated. In fact, magnets and reverse magnets are used. Magnets for steel and reverse magnets for aluminum are used to separate these two items. So it's important to remove the top from this, for example, let that go to metal, and actually this kind of rubbery stuff has to be thrown away. It's very sad, but it does.
So there are some tops that you could recycle,
There are,
but others that you can't.
Yep, I can show you an example of another kind of top that you can recycle. Back in. My favorite jam. You can take a metal lid off like a pasta sauce jar. You can take that off, but those also need to be separated because the glass is going to go one direction and the metal is going to go another in the sorting facility.
So whenever you have an item that is composed of two different kinds of material or fabrics, you want to separate those out, and hopefully both can be recycled.
Well, no, you really want to just think about it. And if you're not sure, you look at the guide, because it's really clear. There's nothing like this in the guide to show you that you can recycle this. So this has to go in the trash. So
Okay.
trash. Another example of a mixed material is we all know that cardboard is completely recyclable, and newspaper completely recyclable. Junk mail, even if you still has tape on it, a flyer, that's completely recyclable. Those things can all go in your recycle bin. But while this mailing packet is paper, it's padded. This particular mailer, for example, is padded with, excuse me, recycled paper, actually. So it's 100% paper. So if I was going to open my awesome package and look and see if I can recycle it, ask if I can recycle it, I would see how many different materials are on this. And this is all paper, so it can go in the bin. But then I get another mailer like this, and it is paper on the outside, same color paper, but on the inside there's a soft plasticky, filmy stuff. And I can't even, I could spend an hour, or I could make you spend an hour, trying to get those two things apart. Then it's not going to come apart. Even a little bit of residue is a problem. So this is just plain old trash. You just have to accept that mixed materials like this tend to be trash.
So this is a good example of the kind of material you were talking about before, where good Arlingtonians and good recyclers would want to say, oh good, I can recycle this as well, but in fact the thing to do is it needs to be thrown out.
Right, right. So that's one of the things that we call wishful recycling, which we want to avoid. So the people who are putting in mixed materials or putting in things in their recycling that are not recyclable are doing more harm than good. And in all honesty, before I was in this job, and I knew that, I did wishful recycling. I was completely,
indiscriminate in terms of what you put in there?
I was thinking about it. I was thinking about it. I think these people are actually really thoughtful when we wish we could recycle something. My approach was sort of, well, it should be recyclable. Like, they should figure it out.
Right, so if I put it in there, then they'll figure out how to recycle it.
Right.
But it doesn't work that way.
Honestly, it's now that I think about it, it's really not a useful thought, because I'm one person in a population of millions of people, and they don't care about my particular recycling. My recycling that's wrong ends up being trash for them, which it's not just a problem of throwing it away, it's the problem of sorting it out and contaminating the rest of the recycling. So some other things that I'd like people to know about are some to-go containers are cardboard, and cardboard like this from berries and things like that. This is already probably a very shredded material. In this case, it can be recyclable or compostable. This kind of to-go-ware, this is actually a tray that the schools are using now in the cafeterias. It's designed to be composted. When something is designed to be composted, that means it's not designed to be recycled.
Okay.
So very few things are both compostable and recyclable. So this, even though it's clean, really should probably go in compost.
And let me ask just about this berry container that you were pointing out. This looks to me also like the kind of container that eggs often come in. Is that
cardboard like
correct?
that is totally fine.
Okay,
Yep.
so those can be recycled.
All kinds of cardboard things. Sometimes they're making more packing material out of this kind of molded cardboard. That's all fine in your curbside recycling as well. Let me see if there's something in here I've forgotten. Okay, so we have some other problems. So that mailer that I showed you is a major contaminating problem. Another thing that people do wrong is that they think the grocery bags or any kind of plastic bag is recyclable. Some of them even have like a number 4 triangle. Like, look at this one. It has a number 2 triangle on it. This is a symbol that people are looking for because we were trained to look
I've
for this
always
symbol.
thought that. I always thought if it has a number on it, that means it can be recycled.
So,
Not
yeah,
true?
You're not alone. Right, it's very deceiving, and it's not intentionally mean or cruel by the manufacturers of the plastic bag. But what it is, it even says reduce, reuse, recycle. So they even added words there to make it sound like, yeah, we're really environmental. But one of the reasons that it's confusing is because we don't have the next best information. What the number 2 and the what we call chasing arrows sign actually is telling us is what this is made out of. It's made out of number 2 plastic. But that doesn't mean that we can recycle it in our curbside recycling. So this can be recycled at a local grocery store. Both of our local grocery stores, not Trader Joe's, but the other 2, they will recycle this there if it's source separated. So at Stop and Shop, for example, they've got a big collection place, and they take all your plastic bags, but it has to be only clean plastic bags that are dry, no big labels on them. If your plastic bags have a label, they don't want them. If your plastic bags are stretchy like this, that's fine, But if they're really crinkly, like spaghetti packaging, they don't want that. And then when we separate out our recycling like that, it can be used in some other manufacturing way. In the case of plastic bags, they're often used to make the plasticky lumber that people use on their decks and things like that. So it's not necessarily made back into the same item that it started as, but it's used in some kind of manufacturing process.
And I'm really struck by something that you said about the numbers that are on these recycling, or that are, sorry, on these materials, and can be deceptive in terms of whether they can be recycled or not. Sounds to me like a better way to think about those numbers is simply as categories used within the plastic industry or whatever to determine what kind of plastic material that is.
Exactly.
And they really don't have specific relevance for recycling. Instead, we need to follow the guide in this case.
In this case, follow the guide. People who have been recycling for many decades now will recall a time when it was okay to recycle plastics number 1 and 2, but not the higher plastics. There may still come a time in the future where there's a limit as to which numbers are recyclable. But the state and even federally, there's some movement to try and get those the recycling messaging to be more standardized, because it's very confusing. In Massachusetts, you could move from one town or city to another town or city, and the rules might have been different. So there's efforts we can talk about, but there are efforts to get that more standardized.
Okay, so we got, I think, a pretty good idea then of all the things that should be going into the bin.
Yeah, but there's a few more that, can I tell you 2 more knots? Is that okay?
Yes,
that
that's what I was going to say. Let's make sure that we have a fuller list of those things that should not be.
Okay, the fuller list. Okay, these are big ones. So foam of any kind. This is just plastic with air blown into it. So it's not that it's not theoretically recyclable. It's just that everything in your recycle bucket has to be of value to the people who are going to buy it and make something new into it. And right now, there's no value in these kinds of foam. Plus, in our sorting facility where our recycling goes, this is very difficult waste to sort because it's very light and it blows all over the place. The sorting facility is looking for things that are valuable, that they can sell to be made into new items, and they're looking for things that their equipment can easily sort. And these do not fall in that category, so these have to go in the trash.
And as I look at those, I am reminded of the bubbles, the storage or wrapping bubbles that come in so many different packages.
Yes, packaging is a big problem.
And so that's a good example of something that you'd think should be recycled, but in fact can't be.
Right, packing peanuts, foam packing
That's
peanuts.
what I meant,
Yep,
yes.
yep. But if you look closely, this is very deceiving because there's a number 6 at the chasing arrows on the bottom of this foam. This is typical of, you won't be able to see it very well on the camera, I don't think, but the meat packaging has this as well, and people will call and say, well, how come you didn't pick up my recycling? And I'll say, because there was foam in it. And they'll say, but it had a number 6 on it. And then I have only really this long explanation to give people, because not everybody reads the newspaper or is up to date on this stuff. You know, we have busy lives. So it makes a lot of sense. We're reverting to, you know, what we think of as a simple explanation, like the number on the item itself, but it doesn't work that way. So a few more things that people put in their recycle bin that really are a problem is scrap metal of any kind, but especially something like wiry, like a cord, an electronic cord, you know, like a plug-in cord and hangers. This is completely recyclable. All metal is recyclable, but not in the curbside recycle bin. It gets wound up in the equipment, and it's actually very dangerous to the recycling employees, the sorting facility employees, and we need to be really careful to keep that out.
So let's
as well.
let us throw that out.
Throw that out. Sorry, yes, and the plastic bag too. No. Okay, I think that's pretty much what I had to show you in the recycle bin. Those are the major things. The last thing is, you'll notice that this jar is nice and clean. I left the labels on, that's okay, but the jar itself is nice and clean. Now,
so just excuse me, the fact that you do have a paper label on a glass jar is not a problem, you're saying. So
It's not a problem in the recycling industry now, but glass is a problem for the recycling industry because it is very low value. So as of now, we're accepting this and we're able to accept this, but this is the kind of thing that could change in the future. But we don't have any firm date or evidence for that, and we will do our best to not to try and keep the message very simple for residents and not make too many changes to the program. We're waiting to see what the state is doing and what's happening nationally in recycling before we make any changes to our program.
Right, but that's a good reminder that we all need to keep up to date. If we know everything, people watching this broadcast and have kept up with the information that you put out, they still need to check back in and make sure that they're up to date on changes that may have happened, such as something that had been fine for a long, long time suddenly is not, or
Right.
vice versa.
Good point, good point. And we don't have any big news to share now, but and we have great channels in which to get the information out. But you can imagine 20,000 households letting everybody know that something like this has changed will be a challenge.
It's challenging, yeah.
But I wanted to point out, just to get back to the cleanliness thing, because I know that this has been an issue for us in the past. Items have to be completely clean. If you can't get it clean, then we would rather you throw it away. And I know that's hard to hear, but it's true because you're just adding trash to the recycling stream.
And I do just want everybody to know and understand that I think you've made real progress in terms of cleaning things out. So, you know, I'm pretty proud of you at this point.
Thanks. So let me just say, for example, peanut butter jars, I just throw peanut butter jars away. But I know other people who put them in the dishwasher and they come out really clean, and that can work well if you happen to.
But very, very important to make sure that things are clean.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we've got a good picture there. What happens if we do the wrong things? You mentioned just a few minutes ago, you said that somebody might say, why didn't you pick up my recycling? Is that what happens if people put the wrong things in their recycling bin?
We will leave the recycling behind. It's true. That is our way of customizing feedback to the general public. There's really no other way other than with the guide that I talked about before. I've got over there. There's the guide, there's sending out emails to the town notices, emails if people are signed up for that. There's articles in the newspaper, there are social media outlets, but still lots of people are very busy and are not concentrating on this particular part of their lives very often. So, if you work in another city like Boston and your office doesn't recycle, you might forget or.
So people should get the message, sounds like to me, that if their recycling is left at the curb and they return home that night and it's still there and they can look around and see their neighbors have been picked up, then the problem is there was something in there that was recognized right away by the team picking up.
Well, ideally what will happen is they will have, this is the way it's supposed to work. They're supposed to get a yellow sticker would be on your recycle bin, and that would be checked off by the hauler or by me at the curb, and we would point out very specifically what happened.
I see that you have, yes, various boxes there that you can check.
Right, and our phone number is on here, and we're a great place to start to call and find out if you're unclear why you got that. Sometimes, someone else walked by and put their dog poop, for example, in your recycling bin. That's really irritating. Doesn't happen very often, but we understand that sometimes things like that happen. But most often it's plastic bags that were put in the recycling. Sometimes people are still using these small bins and they have a lot of recycling, so their solution is to wrap it up in a bag and put it in their bin, but since plastic bags are not allowed, that would just get left behind. So if you have too much recycling, we suggest you get a bigger recycle bin or put your excess recycling in a cardboard box, then we can take it.
I'm glad you have brought out the fluorescent stickers there that I have seen on some people's recycling bins as I move through town. I also see orange ones sometimes. Do those have the same kind of meaning, or is that something different?
So we have orange stickers for trash when there's a problem with the trash. So we're also helping people remember about the 100-gallon trash limit that we have in town. That's the most often reason for getting an orange sticker. Sometimes people have put out toxic materials or a television set. Those things are not picked up at the curb as part of what we call municipal solid waste. So we will check off the box here as well. People can call, and if they have too much trash, they just need to spread it out over the various weeks to get down to the 100-gallon trash limit.
You know, while most of the buildings in Arlington and the properties are residential ones, that's not exclusively the case, and businesses also need to recycle. Are there any differences in anything you've said between residents and businesses?
Well, there's a difference because residents are included automatically in Arlington in our curbside program. If you live in a single 2-3 family, 4, 5, 6 family household, or a small apartment building, you're included, and most condominiums and many apartment buildings are also included. Some larger buildings opt out of our program, but businesses are not automatically included in our program. So businesses have to pay for the trash that they produce. And these days, they also have to pay for the recycling that they produce. Used to be that we would get money back from recycling, but that doesn't happen anymore. Right now, if I was signing a contract, if I was a coffee shop and I was signing a contract with a trash hauler, they would charge me one price for trash and they would charge me another price for recycling. And right now, the price for recycling can be higher than the price for trash. That is a disincentive for businesses to recycle, and it's very unfortunate, but it's the reality of the economics of recycling.
Okay. All right. Well, you have given us a very comprehensive look at the current state, this moment, and again, with a reminder to all our viewers that you constantly need to be making sure you're staying up to date with any changes to what you've just described. We really appreciate that. I did want, before we let our viewers go, to just ask you whether there's anything of import that you'd like to share with the audience that we haven't yet covered.
Just, it's okay to simplify your recycling and just concentrate on the items that we've got really clearly marked and illustrated in the guide. And if you just simplify your curbside recycling a little bit, hopefully it'll be easier for the members of your household to remember, and it will help all the way up through the international recycling concerns that you might be hearing about in the news if you just start at home and keep it really simple and clean.
Okay. Thank you very, very much,
Thank you.
Charlotte Milan. And for Talk of the Town with our town's Recycling Coordinator, Charlotte Milan, I'm James Milan, and it has been my pleasure to be with you today, and we welcome you back next time. Thank you so much.